With the recent signing of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement by Nigeria, stakeholders converge in Lagos to discuss the implications for the nation's economy. Powered by Financial Derivatives Company, the CEO, Mr. Bismarck Rewani, in his opening remarks, gave insight into the rationale behind the forum.
Is this a game changer for Nigeria? Yes. Nigeria's intra-regional trade versus international trade. With Africa is 21%, our international trade is 79%. Manufactured goods only 10%, and agricultural goods only 1.9%. So what is this going to mean? If we take off and embrace this free trade agreement as a path to regional integration, it means that we will have the benefits of scale economies, we'll have the benefits of localization of industry in our country, so people can produce here, and it will also force us to invest in infrastructure across the region, and we will have to deal with some other important issues, including to deal with smuggling, to deal with exchange rate alignment, and also bring down our costs so that we can benefit from this.
Representative of the Vice President of Nigeria, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, said the federal government has set up a National Action Committee to drive the trade agreement process.
Prior to this, His Excellency the President inaugurated the Presidential Committee on the Impact and Readiness Assessment of the AFCFTA for Nigeria in October 2018. The Steering Committee and its Technical Working Group independently reassessed the benefits and risks of the agreement to Nigeria, as well as proposed short, medium, and long-term measures to manage identified risks. The Technical Working Group comprised 190 persons across 50 government agencies and 9 umbrella private sector stakeholder groups who worked over a period of 19 weeks in 7 thematic work streams to evaluate fresh submissions from diverse groups and conduct its own independent studies. The committee's Impact and Readiness Assessment Report for Nigeria was submitted on June 27, 2019, and was a critical part of the process leading to Mr. President's decision to sign the agreement on 7th July 2019. With an inter-African trade surplus of goods at $3.8 billion and a $13.2 billion trade deficit for services, the AFCFTA presents both opportunities and threats for the Nigerian market. The presidential report proposes policies, programs, projects, and interventions which adequately position Nigeria to engage in the further negotiations, as many Nigerian companies have already developed capacity across various sectors and have long desired to expand to the rest of Africa, but have been constrained by trade barriers which the AFCFTA is expected to remove by making African trade more attractive and competitive.
Keynote speakers Mr. Suleiman Diagne and Dr. Amin Marti gave their separate presentations on the opportunities for Nigeria in the Continental Free Trade Agreement as a catalyst, and also the issues around exchange rate volatility as impediments to regional economic growth.
The first benefit, or the first key advantage of the Nigerian economy, is that basically it is the largest market in Africa. With a population of 120 million, it is basically a dominant market, and it basically provides demand for key products. And with that, the expectation is that it will also attract the foreign direct investment. And because the foreign direct investment would likely go into where the biggest markets are, it is expected that Nigeria can basically reap positive effect from this flow of investments. The other aspect is the labor and the skills workforce. Basically, with this foreign direct investment, we expect increased labor, and because we also have enough labor force and skilled labor, it is expected that basically the value addition would also improve on the economy.
When we talk about exchange rate, when we talk in Nigeria, we also have these FX restrictions. So access to FX for a large party of goods are not available in the official market, but you can get it outside if you have other sources of FX. Now, I've talked about the different foreign exchange windows. The official should now note it 306.5, but I'm sure UKJ will correct me. Retail, SMEs, we have the invisible BDCs, etc. I talked about all of those. And then we have the FX restrictions. Well, usually, how does FX restrictions operate? If you have FX restrictions, and if these goods are still needed, then I'm going to put pressure on the parallel market by trying to source myself in FX. So usually what you would see is that you would see a parallel market premium rise and increasing the cost. So far in Nigeria, remember the 2017 experiences where we had it, we haven't seen it more recently because there's enough FX being provided through the windows and somehow the demand is met. But this is what is happening today. If there is any future constraints or shocks, nothing says that the parallel market is not going to be coming back again. So for a sustained basis and the parallel market premium to be reduced sustainably in a permanent way, FX restrictions should not be there because they are part of segmenting the market.
The event featured panel sessions discussing how Nigeria can tap into the Continental Treaty and what needs to be addressed in the uncertainties on the FX regime.
Openness to trade and openness to investment. These are the foundations of the wealth of nations. Any country that does not understand this will go down a cul-de-sac and won't come out. There is no retreat from it. So we have to understand that the growth, the surest path to superior economic performance, to GDP growth that creates jobs, modernizes the economy, will be based on trade and investment. Irrational protectionism is a dead end, it goes nowhere.
Which countries, they all produce agricultural or mineral items. Most cannot add value to it. So who within the continent are you expecting that they will export to and that country will add value before it goes abroad? So it takes more than talking about these things. When you free up the regional giants, Nigeria is supposed to be a giant. You're talking about adding value to agricultural products. In that regard, how is Nigeria a giant? How? If you take oil out of Nigeria's exports, does Nigeria look anything like a giant? That's what this agricultural is also. Please, let's face reality. Let's address the common weaknesses of countries within the continent. And let's focus the conversation on how to address those weaknesses. That's the only way in which you can get results. And that's the way the continents that have done initiatives like this and are getting results, that they have got results. 5 years ago, Nigeria was almost twice as large as it currently is. South Africa was bigger. All of them were bigger. So we are talking of countries whose economies are shrinking, that are recession prone. And you are saying we now have a continental free trade. Unless you can produce more, you don't expect trade to grow just because you have opened your borders. So go and address the question, what is it? Why is it that you can't grow your economy? Your economy is shrinking. Why? How can you put an end, to recession? So if the conversation, I know the ambassador is one of the brains behind this, could include continental efforts to ensure that there is rail transportation in member countries and to, push for how to get this to happen. You don't need to talk about trade. You can take for granted that more will be produced and therefore more will be traded. This is a continent with the least if you look at rail by kilometer, they can't even move human beings, much less move goods. And how can you be competitive in trade if you don't have rail transportation?
We cannot be talking about wanting to build a competitive economy and we have a policy environment that is working in the exact opposite. We are not likely to achieve any concrete results. So we need to think through it properly to be sure that we are really positioning this economy to actually take advantage of the AFCTA, because the manufacturers and those who are opposed to this initially, their concerns were about the environment. We still have issues with our power sector. There is no concrete policy pronouncement yet on how to change the situation in the power sector. There is no indication, I'm not seeing that kind of enthusiasm to push for reforms in this environment. So that for me is a major issue. And of course, we need to also look at other policy issues that have to do with taxation. What is our tax authority bringing to the table to make sure that we're able to key in from the point of view of competitiveness of investors in this economy? Now, there's a major confusion in the trade policy area. The CBN has practically taken over the trade policy formulation in a way, because the foreign exchange policy is at the center of trade. So if you have a situation that it is the CBN that determines what comes in and what doesn't come in, that is a major problem.
Dr. Jumoke Oduwole speaks further on how the federal government plans to scale the ease of doing business reforms to ensure Nigeria is an attractive zone for foreign direct investments.
Collaboration works. So the PEBEC, at least my office, I'm a member of the committee. We're working with several stakeholders to continue to come up and to be agile and flexible and prioritize those areas where the government has already promised private sector that we will be accelerating to have them ready for the implementation of the AFCFTA.
Today, the major concern has been coherence, collaboration, and cooperation in terms of policies from the fiscal to the monetary. From your part, what should we expect in terms of that? Because it's very important for investors. It's also very important for the African market. And of course, Nigeria is a key leader in the market. We intend to see proper signaling, alignment of this. So how is this going to go forward?
Yeah, so this is a very important issue that came up even in our discussions today. Fiscal, monetary coordination, the economic management team. It's feedback that we continue to take. As you know, my boss, the vice president, chairs the economic management team, and we've signaled, I read his speech here, Nigeria is open for business. We are not protectionist, we are not defensive. We're ready to collaborate with the private sector and with investors to welcome every business, every investor that wants to do business here. We are committed to having an enabling business environment with which businesses can thrive, and we're making sure we put the hard infrastructure as well as the soft infrastructure, particularly regulatory, environment, efficiency, and transparency in delivery of public service in place. That is the administration's position on enabling business and welcoming investors to Nigeria.
Trade agreements are critical within regions because of the opportunities for jobs, investments, and economic development. It is expected that Nigeria will entrench the necessary safeguards for local industries and align its fiscal and monetary policies to ensure Nigeria utilizes the free trade agreement effectively.